I should be grabbing screens from all over the place, but we're going to get there, guys. All right, let's get it. Let's get it. There we go. Up and running. How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And today we're going to be talking about the desire for the interracial dating. What has the minority men in such a high demand by the non-minority women? This is a pretty good concept to discuss. Before we get started with today's topic, I want to make sure that you guys like and subscribe to the membership. Join. If you're on the YouTube channel, you guys need to go ahead and take a look at the store that we've got. We got a pretty decent YouTube shop going on right now. We've got about probably 150 plus items in our store, plus affiliate items across the channel. We're looking at new tagged items on all of the featured areas of the show. I'm probably going to have to start tagging some items throughout the show coming up soon. So you'll start seeing that on our lives when we start tagging our products across the channel. Let's see what else we got going on. For you guys that are on TikTok that are coming in, I appreciate you guys coming in. We are a multi-platform podcast, so kind of got to reach out to everybody here as we get started. So for you guys that are on TikTok, over here on the bottom left side of the screen, there's a little window there. You click that little box. It gives you the ability to subscribe to the platform if you're interested in more topics related to today's topics. And we have some other topics that we're going to be getting into. That's going to be some pretty juicy meat and potato style topics on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this coming week. And we have the rest of the calendar set up for the month of September. So strongly encourage you guys to come and take a look at that. Let's see. We've got, I appreciate the likes. Thank you so much. User, you did a good job of showing us some appreciation as you come in. Let's see, live every night of the week, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 5 Pacific. So for those of you that are here looking for an open-minded, open forum podcast, we really appreciate you guys jumping in. We also have, for you guys that are on YouTube, we actually have it for you guys that are on TikTok as well, but it's kind of hard because we have a scrolling comment section. But we have the link that, let's see how we can make this work for y'all. We have a link here that we throw into the comment section over in, let's see, the rest of the platform here. So for the rest of you guys that show up, we've got this link here, and that link there allows you that if you approve the mic and approve the camera on that link, it brings you on straight into the green room, which allows you to be able to jump right into the podcast, give you a nice little shout out for your homies or whatever, as long as it's appropriate. It is a podcast for 18 or older, so I understand that there are some people here that are not 18 or older, and those don't actually end up getting up here. But I also know that for the sake of the podcast, that we show a little bit of love for TikTok as well. And if you ever dive into the podcast and you click the link and approve the mic and approve the camera, you're able to jump into the green room, and then we'll be able to confirm you're the age of 18, put you up on the podcast. Then you can give your what's ups. Also being able to interact onto the podcast with like-minded knowledge, if you agree or disagree with the topic of discussion, and then kind of dive in and put your opinions onto the podcast in real time. Let's see. Make sure that you guys are doing special things and special likes and special emojis and thank you gifts on all the platforms. So YouTube, there's a plethora of ways that you can do that through the comment section. Twitch and Twitter, you can throw a few coins here and there, little roses and other icons that I am not fully familiar with. But you guys can throw a little something down to show your appreciation to the podcast. Otherwise, you could always just hit that like button, mash on those hearts and thumbs ups and other interactions to show your support for the live podcast while it's running. Get us up there to about 100,000, and that'll show some support for the podcast where we can try to get a little bit more push from the algorithm, make it a little bit larger of a interactive live podcast. So I greatly appreciate you guys for doing that. We also have a goal for those of you that are on TikTok. We're trying to get our stream keys. So you see we have a subscriber goal of 100,000 subscribers. We technically need at least 10,000 subscribers to pull away with that stream key. So, we appreciate your assistance with reaching that goal. So if you guys want to hit a follow button for those of you on TikTok to show us some support so that we can kind of get our subscriber level up to that 10,000 level so that we can kind of meet the expectations of trying to get that subscriber key. Greatly appreciate that. We are dropping highlight videos on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter on a daily and weekly basis. So you could always come to the channel on the respective channel that you're watching us from and be able to go and take a look at some of the highlights from the last show. We typically select at least one show out of the week and do a lot of highlights of the show. And then we typically try to rotate out all of the shows. Since we have 365 shows a year, it's going to be kind of hard to highlight all of the better moments from all of the better shows throughout the year and have them all played at the same time. But we're going to work it out. We're going to figure it out. As it stands right now, just definitely at least some of the better shows that you see out of the week, you'll see highlights from those shows, and you'll see highlights from every show at some point across the podcast, because I'm actually doing some throwbacks and reaching out to some of the previous podcasts and trying to get some highlights up from some of the previous podcasts as well as some of the most recent podcasts. So you'll definitely be able to take a look at some of those. And you can also just go back and take a look at a lot of those shows as they had originally aired. It's a small podcast because we've only been around since November. So kind of going back to about November right now. So you'll be able to take a look at least the last 11 months worth of podcasts and enjoy some of the startup days when this podcast was rough and tumble. But as I get more refined and more sophisticated, we'll be able to utilize a more knowledge-based and more informative podcast as opposed to before. It was always knowledge-based and informative, but we had a lot more information coming in from me. And now it's a lot more of me bringing you more information. So it's going to be greatly improved. The tea. So let's go ahead and tap down on this topic here. I was like a jolt of energy. Kind of got to get a vitamin B12. So we're looking at what's the deal with the high promotion of interracial dating and potentially interracial marriage. And outside of the stereotypes, because the stereotypes are going to be some of the reasons that people are going to assume is the true reason why minority men are highly desired. And I'm going to be real with you that genetic speaking, we all got a little bit of everybody in our genetic history. So you're not going to really see something in one race that you're not going to see in another race. You have behavior patterns in all walks of life. So you might find some with a better attitude or a better temperament in some races that you're not going to find in other races, but it is equivocally around all of the other races. So the difference between dating inside of your race and dating outside of your race is not going to be much of a difference once you've experienced enough dates. So the thing is that what makes you typically lock down with one of those minority groups is because they're not going to give up on you. The brothers are out there on the grind. They are looking for long term. They're looking for and all of the men are, or at least most of the men, moderate to high value men are looking for long term. But the drive and the dedication from some of the minority men might outshine some of the rest. as far as the lengths that they're willing to go when they don't have the financial resources to impress you with their money, the lengths that they're willing to go to maintain a positive rapport with their girl is yet determined. It's one of those things that you could be particularly proud of. But we noticed that the way that the minority men would try to take care of their minority women, you have to understand that brothers got a lot of things to deal with when we're dealing with dating our sisters inside of the aggressive race that we have. So with the effort that we put into dealing with the ruthless aggression and the gentlest that we try to bring towards that ruthless aggression leads us to say, you know what, hold on. We could probably get this treatment better from somewhere else, and typically tiptoe into other races, and that's when you start finding a more kind-hearted and gentle race that is going to still be the partner that you need, that is actually going to be more of a companion to you than the ones that are trying to dominate and rule you. And you come to notice that across the board that there are going to be the same behaviors of women in every racial group. It's just going to be observed on different social classes. So you may find in a lower value group of women, regardless of the race, that they may have a more overly aggressive and more disrespectful and dominating fashion. And then you may also find in moderate to higher value groups a little bit less of that overly aggressive and overly dominant fashion. But the men are going to behave the same way throughout. Now, you're going to have men that are going to be violent and abusive. That's not going to change in our society, that there are men that are overly aggressive and abusive, but there are actually a lot of men out there that are really good guys that really would be interested in taking good care of their girl and putting in the effort to show her her value and her worth. And it is interesting how those men are more often than not passed up because of their financial status. Now, one of the things that the non-minority races are not going to do in some situations is not misrepresent the potential for success with the fact that he's just broke, because there are more I would say patience in some other cultures, where when they see a diamond in the rough, they try to sculpt that into something more successful. You have, just like politicians you would see, and big business, you would see those women that will marry into something for the sake of the success of the operation, not necessarily for the companionship and other such. So you still see somewhat dowries and somewhat arranged marriage kind of situations where the child of one company marries the child of another company and keep the money in the family, or keep the success in the business, where you don't necessarily have to be uh, uh, in love with one another when you first meet, but they expect you guys to business relationship, and then at least in public keep it cordial, to keep the relationship in a family where it's worth I really appreciate that, thank you. Keep the business and the family worth maintaining and controlling. So you will notice and observe in more areas of social hierarchies, you'll notice that the men, especially the stronger men that are starting to build themselves up to become more successful and more self-sufficient men, are going to start breaking the mold. And when they break the mold, you're going to start seeing the uh, humbleness of the man that grew up in the school of hard knocks, that did not have all of those excessive resources, and the kind-hearted generosity and companionship that he had. Now being backed by wealth, you will see a more kind-hearted and generous man than you would see from somebody that was born in a wealthy community. So that would be the difference in behavior, because when you have that self-entitlement, you have a level of arrogance. When you have no concept of entitlement, you have more of a level of humbleness. And that humbleness also leads you to an era of generosity. And the irony behind that is that if you did not grow up with a silver spoon in your mouth, you're actually not going to be as negative and aggressive towards other people inside of your social group, because you do not have that behavior of entitlement. A man that is coming out of a financially challenged household is not going to be the kind of man that is going to demand respect because he's related to somebody with power and wealth. Do you know who my father is? Do you know who my uncle is, or something to that effect? And I'll call so and so, and I'll make them make you do what I want, kind of behavior. You're not going to get that type of entitlement or that type of self-righteous behavior from somebody who does not have that level of resource, or that level of lack of inherited wealth and power to make those types of observations. So you come to determine that it's actually more beneficial for you to go and find somebody who had nothing and help them get everything. Because once they've been at the bottom, and they know what it's like to be at the bottom, as they make it up to the top, they have a higher level of wealth, and they have a higher level of respect for their peers, which is not something that you're going to see if you're at the top and you don't know what it's like to be at the bottom. You don't know what it's like to struggle. You don't know what it's like to have it hard. And then also, you don't know what it's like to make your own decisions, because decisions have been made for you your whole life, because that's what the people around you were paid to do. It makes it harder for you to be more self-sufficient. So this actually changes the way we socialize and interact with one another. And it also changes the way we participate in our romantic engagements. Now, you're going to wonder, well, why is it not the same all the way around? And it's because, well, outside of the difference in your racial groups, you're also going to have another difference in your social groups. So you might have upbringings from the old ways with, Big Mama and them, where you have 3 generations and 5 generations of family, not wealth, just family, where sticking together and treating people like they're highly valuable might be the traditions and household. Whereas in more wealthier environments, protecting your assets and sacrificing your kinfolk to make a buck or keep a buck might be the thing to do. So the upbringing also changes the narrative when you start talking about the type of person that will be developed before adulthood. So once you reach that adulthood, then your ability to make informed decisions and your ability to exercise the knowledge that you have learned in your youth, because you have what you were taught by your mother and your grandmother and your great grandmother versus what you were taught by the male role models in your family. Because in the lower wage areas, a lot of the times you might find that there isn't always a male in the household, whereas in the higher levels of social hierarchy, where there's a little bit more wealth involved, there is more often the ability to still have a male accessible, even if he's working all the time. So don't believe that just because it was a poor family that there isn't a male in the household, because they're always in trouble there, or they're always grinding out. Even in wealthy families, the males are typically expected to be the breadwinners. There are some alpha boss ladies that are there where mom and dad is working, but dad's more often than not at work. Dad's more often than not prioritizing getting more money for the family. So he's not there for your recitals. He's not there for football practice. He's not there for um, any of your successful achievements because he's got to go and make that money for you to be in that $300,000 a year private school. So, you still have, even in wealthy families, where you might still get to see your dad on a regular basis, but you don't really have that male role figure that you would want because dad's always working. Dad's always grinding. Mom is at the house more often than not. And then when you have in the wealthy families where they can afford to pay for a nanny, where mom and dad are highly successful in working, then you have a nanny that is more of a mother than your actual birth mother because the nanny is there for all of your successes. The nanny is there for all of your basic needs, all of your primary expectations, and your mom and dad passes by you uh, on their way to go and make money, on their way to another trip across the country, across the world to make money and bring in wealth. So think about how the family structure is going to be a lot more redefined in higher financial classes because since they are wealth driven, they're going to be more tuned to getting the money as the parents and adults in the household, and the kids are going to be more capable of spending that money and then being able to utilize that money to make decisions for them or manipulate the masses where if you spend enough money in this situation, you can get yourself out of trouble. And if you spend enough money in this situation, you can change the outcome of certain situations depending on how much money is needed and how much money you have access to. These things you learn at a younger age, and then you buy your way into situations that you otherwise wouldn't qualify for, and buy your way out of situations that you otherwise would have gotten in trouble for. When you don't have wealth, you actually learn how to treat people so that you're not having to buy your way into a social engagement. You just don't get involved in engagements where you're not welcome. And then you also have the don't make the irresponsible choices as often, where you don't have to face those negative consequences because you don't have the money to bond yourself out. You don't have the money to bail yourself out of those consequences. So you just avoid making those mistakes. Now, that's going to give you different levels of character because different levels of character, these brothers that are coming out of the hood that are all about getting a grind on and making enough money to take care of their family and then enjoying that money with their family is probably going to be closer with their family than the men that are growing up in a family where money makes everything move. You can take a black card and go somewhere. That's the closest thing to a minority in the house is the credit card. You take that and you go somewhere and you negatively influence the cashier to do whatever you want them to do because you've got a credit card with an unlimited spending limit on it. They're getting paid by commission. Now you've got people giving you the type of attention you don't get at your house. And these types of people are going to typically take this behavior everywhere they go. And you're going to have, like I've been saying throughout the last 30 minutes, that you're going to have a different dynamic. You're going to have a different behavior pattern. So both the men and the women are going to behave differently because of the influence of wealth in their lifetime, in their childhood, as well as their accessibility of wealth in their adulthood. But when they go to find a partner, there's going to be a huge difference in the way they treat their partners, because when you come from an area of moderate resources, you're going to have a moderate level of dignity and self-respect that's going to be maintained because money is not going to make everything move for you. So you're going to be able to treat people with a reasonable quantity of dignity and respect, we would hope. And while you are in that realm, you would be dealing with the social engagements in your area, and you're typically, depending on the neighborhood and culture that you're living in, you're going to be having a accessibility of certain variety types, and that's going to be what determines your relationship status. So if you have a moderate to higher level of sophistication, class, self-respect, dignity, and a little bit of resource, you probably would be considered a cream of your crop. And in addition to being reasonably attractive, your ability to be successful in your area could potentially make you a go-to guy for a lot of women. I really appreciate the hearts, guys. Thank you very much. Keep showing me that support. And those women will give you the type of engagements that develops the beginning of your uh, sometimes interracial engagements. But what causes you to change races is the curiosity, because men like variety. So we're going to try out women from every time a relationship goes bad, or every time a social interaction dissolves itself. We're going to try to see what it's like in different racial groups. Once we start diving into these other racial groups, that's when we start experiencing different behavior patterns. There are going to be a lot of the same, but there's going to be a lot different, because you're going to have some that will do more for you in certain ways, where others will not so much. You will also have some that will put forth extra effort in certain areas, where others not so much. And depending upon the things that you would like and the things that you would prefer not to experience, will determine which racial group you would prefer to seek your women from. So outside of physical attributes, men would more often go for the more respectable woman, the more conservative woman, the more sophisticated woman that you can find in every race. But certain social structures, you're not going to be able to find that. So you may end up, and then it also depends on the size of your family, but you may end up choosing different racial groups, because the behavior patterns of certain racial groups in the environment that you're in have been stereotypically not positive. And that leads you to go and seek other racial groups where you're not dealing with the negativity from the ones that are in that social structure. Now, you will then come to find that you are historically selecting more individuals in a specific racial group. But as we understand, once we start reaching our middle ages, you ask yourself, how many relationships have you been in since you were 15, 16 years old? Now, understandably, guys, if you've had 5 or 10 relationships, 15 or 20 social engagements outside of your hookup culture, where you had the, random flings with women, you have to understand that if you've had 5 or 10 or 15, that you come to notice that statistically you've experienced probably the same quantity of negative relationships as the average man. So selectively grabbing a specific racial group, or excluding a specific racial group, does not increase your odds of finding the right woman. But it does deter you from the stereotypical negative behavior from certain types of women that are actually in every racial culture. But today's show is about the women grabbing the brothers. We have had the ability to be more understanding and caring and nurturing, and broke. So you ain't got a lot of money to throw around. You're able to use your personality and your charisma to overcome where your financial status does not go. It's just the way things are in social atmospheres. A lot of women, the way they're being treated by their brothers, so they're gonna tend to gravitate more towards the brothers. You're gonna see the guys that are in the lower income statuses being a lot more nicer, a lot more expressive, a lot more verbal, because they can't really have their money talk for them. So you're not going to see an overly expressive gesture that is throwing a bunch of money around. You're not going to see Rolex watches flying up everywhere and everything like that from a brother. I mean, you might from some that are highly wealthy, but from the average man, that's not so much. So you're going to technically see a lot more of genuine effort going into the acts of kindness, which is something that you would be able to recognize and highly appreciate. And men across the board typically play for keeps, so they don't really get rid of the women that they try to get involved with. they typically get rid of the women that are not in line with their agenda, that has no intention of changing. But the men, more often than not, try to grab, like Pokemon, as many as they can keep in their harem, and try to hold on to all of them at the same time. They don't necessarily try to use her for a short period of time and then leave her and go get another. You typically experience that with the higher financial status men, who are going to treat women like objects because they bought her attention for $5,000 or $10,000. So they're going to get their $5,000 or $10,000 worth out of her. And then after that, they're going to drop her and go and find someone else because they have that wealth. But a guy who probably takes a month or two to get that $5,000 or $10,000, you're not going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a woman, and they're going to do more effort, and they're going to do more monetarily less gestures that will show the compassion and their affections towards the woman. And then the phrase that it's the thought that counts kind of goes a lot further, because instead of you thinking, well, if I get her this Gucci purse, that she'll shut up, you're not going to have that particular behavior. You'll have more along the lines of, well, she likes this, she likes this, she likes that. Let me put all three of these things together and give her a day of everything that she likes. Instead of you asking your personal assistant, what does my girlfriend like? You actually know what your girlfriend likes. That actually plays a huge difference. So when we start looking into why are the brothers being picked more often by non-minority races than you would see some of the other men being picked, it's because we had it hard. We know what value and appreciation looks like. We know what the absence of value and appreciation also looks like. So we value valuing people, and we value being valued by people, and we put a lot more effort into showing that, as opposed to just charging your feelings to the credit card. So you're going to see a difference in behavior. Now you're also going to see the cultural differences. So you're going to see people that are going to be dealing with those stereotypical hereditary culture traditions that they're going to want to be involved in. So apparently minorities aren't the only ones that like watermelon, fried chicken, horseshoes, and dominoes. So I mean, you can't get that everywhere. So you just got to go where that's located at and go and find you somebody there that can enjoy their time with you. So you're going to typically dive in and try to join in with that particular culture. You also have cultural preferences, music types, and hobbies and such. And you're typically only going to experience that in certain social cultures, which is going to mean that you're probably going to gravitate more towards certain social cultures that are going to give you a lot more interaction in that particular culture. So you may see that it isn't just the man that they're actually going after. It could be the lifestyle that particular type of man actually lives that you want to be involved in. And you actually, because that is your lifestyle, you will find a partner in that lifestyle. And it just so happens to be a minority. I mean, if you like monster trucks and you like horse riding and riding bulls and stuff, and then you find you a partner in that area, that partner in that area is probably not going to be the same type of partner that's into low riders and tricked out cars with 36-inch rims and loud stereo systems. Just certain preferences that you have is going to attract a certain type of person. I really appreciate those likes. Thank you very much. So you're going to see that you're going to get a big difference. So if you have expectations, and those expectations are going to be met from a cultural perspective, like, for example, in the Asian cultures, you have the women that are more catering to the men than the Western cultures. If a man wants a woman that is more catering than an American woman, they'll probably go and get a woman from Asia, Vietnam, somewhere in that area. But sticking into your Western cultures, if you're dealing with the difference between finding a woman in a religious background versus finding a woman in a more how would I put this, explorative background. So if you were one of those Need for Speed kind of folks, because I know those people out there in California that was doing those underground shows in those Walmart parking lots until California took 150 cars and towed them away. Yeah, y'all know, y'all seen those what do they call those drop trucks, the ones with the front lifted and the back lowered, and they towed everybody's vehicle from over there too. And you just, people that are into modified cars, there's always going to be whatever the guys are into, the women are into too. If you're dating the kind of girl that likes fast cars, you're going to be probably dating fast women, because a librarian is not going to be at a car meet. You know, the pastor's daughter might be at the car meet, but a school teacher is not necessarily going to be at a car meet more often than not. You know, a scholar is going to be doing things on a more intellectual level, and a rebel is going to be doing more things that are exciting. So if you're looking for more excitement, you're going to be gravitating towards the type of person that does more exciting things. And I mean, you have the overly active population versus the underactive population, where you have certain types of people that like to travel, climb mountains, jump out of airplanes that aren't on fire, base jump off of buildings without parachutes that aren't on fire, and like typically fall off of bridges, push people off of bridges that aren't on fire. And I don't understand why you need that type of thrill in your life, because really I can get that exact same thrill by getting pulled over. Just, you know, hey, I didn't get shot today, I'm having a good day. Worst part about this engagement, I got a ticket. Woo, I'm excited. You know, that's not not everybody has that experience. Now, most people are like, man, I've never been pulled over in my life. And I will look at that same person and say, I've never jumped off of a bridge, I've never jumped off of a building, and I've never jumped off of an airplane. I just got to say, there are certain cultural differences that people don't get to experience. And when you're looking for a little bit more excitement in your life, you're looking for a little bit more change in your life, or if you're looking for less excitement in your life, you're looking for less chaos in your life, and you're looking for something that is different from your norm, you're typically going to go to a different social group, and then you're going to try to see what it's like over there. And it's different. It's not necessarily better, but because it's different, you might like different, and different might be perceivably better for you. And then you might end up finding you a partner in that particular social group. So if you wanted to you have an infatuation for like the Spanish culture, and you decide to go to Mexico or Spain and get you a Spanish woman, and then you go out there and treat her the way you would have treated the sisters here in America. I mean, it doesn't change anything. You would be able to go out there and still find you a pretty reasonable woman that'll not mistreat you as a man. But the fact is that because you're infatuated with that particular culture, you are seeking somebody in that culture. So the habits of that culture become the norm for you. So if you are a family oriented person and you're in a country that is not family oriented, and you decide to go to a country that is more family oriented, you're going to end up getting you an interracial relationship, because the person in that culture that is more traditional and more family oriented, which is what you're looking for, is going to be somebody that's not in line with your culture. And then you guys have that culture clash in your relationship, which actually is more interesting. And you're going to see that culture clash is such a phenomenal experience, no matter what race you're going to the point where you get to teach stuff to your partner, and your partner gets to teach stuff to you, and you guys get to maintain a level of mutual respect for one another, because you're always learning from each other, which also expands your horizons, which also expands your growth in your relationship. And it's something that is not going to exist as readily when you both come out of the same culture. That's one of the things that they say, that opposites attract versus we have a lot in common. Both of these phrases are equally good in relationships, but you're going to find out that while opposites attract, you're going to have more things to learn from each other. Opposites are going to have a lot of fights because you're going to have a lot of differences of opinion. You're going to have a lot of cultural and traditional differences that you have to adapt to, and you have to have the understanding and compassion for one another to be able to overcome those hurdles, no matter how minor or severe those differences are. Opposites attract are going to have less boredom than we have a lot in common. Because if you have everything in common with one another, you both have the same likes and dislikes, you're not going to have the battle with one another about what you want and what you don't want. But what you will end up having is you will end up having a situation where you're going to get bored. They think about the same thing that you think about. So while you guys can entertain one another by playing the same video games, getting into the same sports, going to the same activities together, doing the same things, the problem that you're going to have is if you're bored, you're both bored. You don't feel like doing anything, they don't feel like doing anything. Do you understand that if you both are bored at the same time, then y'all are bored with each other at some point? And that's when you start when you start having too much of an idle situation where you're both bored with each other, you start trying to spice up the relationship by cheating. You start spicing up the relationship by bringing other people into the relationship. You start getting every relationship, you're going to get content with one another. I appreciate the likes. Every relationship is going to get content with one another. And the longer that you guys spend time together, the more you're going to be used to each other's existence. It's not going to be this wild, flaming relationship where you guys are going to be shagging all the time. You guys are going to get content with one another. And just like waking up and looking at each other is enough, without even having to say anything. There's going to be a situation where you guys will be able to pass around the house and not even be in the same room and be good that you know that your significant other is in the house, not necessarily in the same room as you. And it doesn't matter whether you're a same race relationship or an interracial relationship, it's going to be the same. But the difference is that you might not get there as fast if you have a lot to learn from your partner. If you guys are similar, you might get there quicker. And then if you get there quicker and then the boredom sets in, instead of you recognizing the fact that your bond is stronger, faster, that you guys can just exist with each other in a more civilized fashion, then you start ending up looking for the excitement and the adventure. A lot of women say that they do not like vanilla. Vanilla is the best kind to have. I'm going to be real with you. The women want excitement and they want adventure up until they're in their like late 30s, and then they want to settle down, and then they want to try to start looking for stability. Vanilla is stability. Bland is stability. The simple, predictable, everyday whatever is stability, because the money is always going to be consistent. If it's increasing, it's going to be gradually increasing on a consistent basis. If it's flat, it's going to be flat on bit. It's not going to be fluctuating. He's not going to have a good job this year and be broke next year. It's not going to be, stable today and then the house is being foreclosed on next week. It's not going to be, quiet today and fist fights and beer bottles tomorrow. It's going to be consistent. And people get bored with consistency. They get bored with normal, but normal is great. So you'll find that a lot of relationships that have more of you being able to get in there and learn and do with your partner, but you have a lot more blandness in your relationship. You'll find that is safer, but it's just not as exuberating. Now, one of the things that I've said in other shows is that you got to find couple things to do as couples, because typically what we do is we're so used to the hookup culture. Once we get a significant other, when we decide to go out and have a good time, we go do singles activities as a couple, thinking that that's great. It's not. You jeopardize your relationship by doing that. Nobody really understands that. You are not going to a local club where you're packed in like sardines, where somebody else could be grinding on your spouse, because everybody in that room is supposed to be single. You go somewhere where there's a lot of space, where people are paired up, like go to a dance hall, you go bowling, you go places where couples go, you go to dinners and stuff, because you're not looking for a significant other. You already have one. And then you have to think about it. What can you do at the nightclub that you can't do at your house? Get you a karaoke machine, get you a few good friends, get you a few good couple friends, and y'all do like a karaoke night, y'all do like a game night, y'all do like a family fun night, start up a bowling league, start up a baseball team, something like that, and a golf group. Listen to the things that I'm selecting. Nowhere in there did I say grab you some dice and go to the street corner and make it happen. It's just the fact is that there are different ways that you could get in there and get involved and have entertainment in your relationship, but you're doing couples activities. You have the ability to do things separately, where you have your own friends that you interacted with before your relationship started, that you're going to maintain relationships with after your relationship starts. But you are going to make sure that when you're doing things as a cohesive unit, outside of some of the stuff that you do by yourself. But the differences that you're going to realize in these dynamics is the choice of where you're going to go and what you're going to do. That isn't always readily emphasized in every culture, because we might like horseshoes and dominoes and playing checkers as pastimes. Some people might like Call of Duty and San Andreas, and I'm waiting until GTA 6 comes out, and it's going to be a whole different ball game when that happens. But we're not going to see the same dynamic as somebody that's into operas and concert halls and matinees and museums. It's a whole different lifestyle. And while that lifestyle is a different level of boring, there is a whole different culture of excitement and adventure in knowledge. So stimulating the mind might be done in different ways in different cultural groups. Because when you start thinking about if you've ever played the game of dominoes, when you got to add up those points, like playing spades. I know a lot of y'all play spades. You're trying to figure out the point system. You're trying to figure out how to throw these guys. There's a little bit of strategy involved with that stuff. There's strategy with croquet. There's strategies with horseshoes. There's strategies with darts. But the difference between all of those is that with darts, you're probably going to get beer and peanuts, whereas with horseshoes, you're going to get barbecue, and with croquet, you're going to get horses. So you're going to have different cultural experiences with different groups of people. And I recommend that you try a lot of stuff in a lot of different places and get your feel of things, because the more well-rounded that you are, the more likely you'll be able to find a better match. Because if you limit your expectations, one of the things that I've understood about social dating is that, especially you notice this when you're on your dating app. So those of you that have social media platforms where you're swiping left for the ones that you're not interested in and swiping right for the ones that you think are attractive or cute in some way, shape, or form, you notice that more often than not, you are immediately picking that person's profile because of their profile photo. Whether it is the natural beauty that they have, or if it's guys looking at girls, it's going to be the way that she poses on this thing. So if typically it's a back shot, and because of the attributes that she's exploiting on this photo, you're like, yeah, I could see myself smashing that. Swipe right. You look at the face like, oh, she's cute. Swipe right. But does she have a piss poor attitude? And then the girl that's got her back shots in that photo, is she always putting her butt out like that on a regular basis? Because you're not going to want your girlfriend showing her ass. You're going to expect your girlfriend to be conservative, but that's not going to change you from swiping right on that app. See, we don't think about these things. Our subconscious primal instincts on a dating app is not going to dictate the type of person that we need. It will dictate the type of person that we desire. Now, the other thing that you have to remember, even on these dating apps, even a dating app that's exclusive to a specific culture doesn't always have a specific culture in it. So you come to notice that on these dating apps, I really appreciate the likes, guys. Thank you very much. You come to notice that even if you pay for the app, this is the fucked up part. Even if you pay for the app, you're going to notice that you will go into your profile, you'll put what you like and put what you don't like into this app. The app will then show you people that meet your criteria. Now, you will, out of those people that meet your criteria, select the ones that you prefer out of that criteria, whether it's age, physical features, heights, whatever. Then, out of the people that you select, some of them will also select you. If you go back into your profile and you look at the number of people that you hit the like button on and cross-reference it with the same number of people that liked you back, you will come to find out that there is a small percentage of people that liked you back out of the percentage of people that you actually liked. Why do you think this is? Because what you like doesn't necessarily like you. And reverse, what likes you, you don't necessarily like. So you might have 100 people that you like. You might have 100 people that like you. But out of the 100 people that you liked, they may not have 100 people that like you back on that app. Maybe have 20 that like you back on that app. Out of the 20, you might have one conversation. But out of the 100 that liked you, 80 of them you don't like. So you end up in a situation where, while you have a large quantity of profiles that are sifting through your account, a lot of people jumping into your DMs, you might have a few thousand people in a month that slide into your DM and throw comments, and you ghost them. You don't respond to them. You leave them unread. And in this modern culture, because you guys have to understand that here in 2024, we're looking at the Gen Zs are taking over. So the Gen Zs are right now 23, 26 kind of situation, or getting up there. And you guys are going to be the largest portion of the dating pool. And the middle-aged men that are going to be in their 40s and 50s are going to be dating the women that are in their 20s, 18 to 27. So the women that are in their 20s, 20 to 25, you're prime real estate for the men that are 45 years old. Some women are going to say ew, gross. A lot of women are going to be like, score, because you're going to get you a financially successful man that's going to be able to take care of you for the rest of your life. If you don't want to work, that's the easiest way to get it in. Priorities. But now that you're thinking about this, the young men that are 20 to 25, 20 to 28, who did not get born with a silver spoon in their mouth, are not going to have the resources that a 45 or 50-year-old man is going to have, because that 45 or 50-year-old man has spent 3/4 of his life working to get that wealth. So even in the dating realm, a 20-year-old is going to have heavy competition financially against a 40-year-old because they don't have that wealth. They're still trying to figure it out. They don't have mentorships. Not very many. Only, I would remember, in the higher class areas, do you have an apprenticeship situation that is generically embedded in the American culture, in the Asian culture, that it's just guaranteed that it's embedded into learn what dad does, just learn stuff everywhere. But here in the Western culture, not too many of us are teaching the next generation what to do. Not very many of us are teaching the next generation how to behave. Most of us don't even know how to behave as adults. So to teach somebody else how to behave is beneath us to even really consider. And then there is so many that need guidance. And we're just going to chalk it up to they didn't have that guidance in their childhood. They didn't have that guidance growing up. So we're going to excuse their inappropriate behavior because they wasn't given the guidance that they needed. Well, you learn better in your 40s and 50s. And then some of us start actually teaching the next generation some shit to help them become a little bit better at what they're doing. But do you realize that those people that are in their 40s and 50s that are now teaching the 18, 20-year-olds how to behave and the decision-making processes that they need to have, if those people had that guidance when they were 15 to 18, they'd be more successful today. So you will then see that in a lot of these these cultures, you will then see this spin that not a lot of people will readily see in other cultures. The more successful men in the Middle Ages, because they had more guidance in their younger years. So the hookup culture is going to be different because you're going to see more wealthier men in non-minority cultures than you would see in the minority cultures, and those men are going to be after the younger women because they're going to be looking for more complacent women, less volatile and violent women. And then you're going to be trying to compete against that when you're not in the 34 percentile that's in the $70,000 to $100,000 a year realm. You're also going to be looking at those men that are still trying to grind and come up. Few of them that's got child support that they have to deal with, alimony from bad marriages. Getting married at a young age is a bad idea, and we're starting to learn that as men. It is volatile for us to get married, and there is almost no reason to do it outside of the fact that we were taught that getting married was the thing to do. But who taught us men that getting married was the thing to do? It wasn't a man. It was not a man. We grew up in single family households, or we grew up in women driven households where being married was the talk of the town. And that's what led us to thinking that getting married was the thing to do. Most men tell you that if you can't afford to pay for a girl, you shouldn't try to date her because they're going to cost money. You know this. You're also taught to be the breadwinner. You're also taught that if you're going to be a quote unquote man, society dictates that you should be a man by being financially successful. So since you understand that, you also understand that you're not going to be able to be that financially successful man without actually having the ability to be financially successful. Well, without being able to chase that financial success. And that's also going to mean that you have to figure out how to become financially successful as you work your way up in life. And while you're working your way up in life, you're going to be making a lot of mistakes. And one of the things that men are also going to do, men are going to more often than not refuse to get involved in a relationship when they recognize that they're financially challenged, because they were taught in their younger years that men take care of their families, men take care of their girlfriends, and men take care of their children, or at least some men take care of their children, but they're encouraged to take care of their children. So if you're looking at your money, you can barely take care of yourself, you might need to depend on somebody else to help subsidize your income. You're not going to have the courage and confidence to say, yeah, I'm broke as fuck, but I'm going to go out here and try to talk to this female and I can't do shit for her. Most men are not going to do that. Most men are going to say, no, I don't got it right now. I'm going to focus on my bag. I'm going to try to get my money up. I'm going to try to, work things out. You might have the occasional hookup somewhere, but you're not going to be determined to turn that into something because it's not, you're not going to be able to sustain it. It's not financially inside of your grasp. Now, if you accidentally end up in a relationship with somebody unintentionally because you are, you come across this person in passing, and that hookup turn into frequent hookups, and those frequent hookups turn into a relationship, which is a bad thing because those types of relationships don't last as long as a relationship that started with an emotional connection with one another that stays a strong emotional connection that you guys are manifesting. Because if it starts off physical fades faster than emotional, and the emotional will always be there when a physical attraction is no longer there. But fact is that primal instincts take into effect, like I said earlier, and we typically we follow the primal instincts. Most men are driven off of lust, and women are driven off of financial stability. So between the two, if you're spending enough money and she looks attractive enough, then the two of you will hook up. Now, the reason why your relationship is not going to last that long is because if you are wasting your bill money to entertain this female, she's going to show up because you're entertaining this female with your bill money. You're probably going to be able to smash quite a few times until you run out of money. Money gets tight. You're going to start putting in double overtime to make ends meet. And now you're not available for her. There's going to come a point where she's going to be demanding your attention. You're going to bring that attention. And then while you're bringing that attention, you're not bringing any money because your attention used to come with money and now you can't afford it. that's when you're going to be able to test the grain and come to find out that she may not have been there for you. She may have been there for the money that you was bringing to the engagements that y'all were having. And now that you're not bringing the money to those engagements, she's going to ghost you. Not all women do this, but we experience this type of woman more often in our younger years. And then we start being more selective. So we start going from quantity over quality to quality over quantity. And when you start thinking about quality over quantity, you're getting far less engagements because the quality of the woman is far greater than the average woman that you engage. So when we start talking about the average woman that we engage, that is not girlfriend material, that is not wife material, that is worthy of hooking up with and going out and having a good time with, but not worth having a long-term relationship with, we start thinking about the fact that if we were more focused on dating those women that would be worth us having a good time with, dating and showing the ropes, then we would be in a better situation mentally. We would be in a better situation socially, and we would be in a better situation financially. Because if the woman that you're selecting as your long-term partner is actually going to behave as your long-term partner, she's investing in your success. So she's not telling you, take me out to a $200 movie. She's telling you to take that $200 and invest it into stocks. She's telling you, just like I told you guys before, to take a few $100s at a time and throw that money into some checking accounts, that high interest yield checking accounts at $175 or $180 gives you $10 a year guaranteed off this checking account every year. And if you're doing this method, it's money that's not reported to the IRS. So now you got, you start stacking your cash up because you start getting a few $100s here and there, a few $1,000s here and there that the IRS doesn't know shit about. It's one of those things, like people that don't report their tips. You could start collecting extra unreported capital that you can move around and start doing better things with. Anybody that's financially challenged, coming out of the rough, that you're a moderate $50,000, $70,000 a year person, and you're able to take $2,000 to $5,000 a year and put it aside for savings and not miss it, not needed to go pay a bill right after. You can put that $5,000 away in a few dozen checking accounts and let that money stack up and get that 5% interest off of that money. That's what, $250 a year off of that $5,000. That's a lot more than what you would have gotten if you would have been spending that $5,000 on dating. When you think about how much money that you spend on dating, how much do y'all spend going to the club? Wing Speed, what do you think? $250, $300 at a nightclub because you're spending the gas to get over there, $20 to park, $20 to cover. You're already $40 to just get in the building, and that's if you went by yourself. If you're going with somebody else, it's $20 to park, $20 a person for cover. You just spend $60 to get into the building. Then think about, you guys are going to buy drinks. This is not if you go buy food after the fact. This is just getting into the club and grabbing a few drinks. Typically 2 to 4 hours in the nightclub, you're buying 2 drinks per hour, 3 drinks per hour on average, which is around about $10 to $20 a drink, depending on the style of drink that you buy. So you're spending anywhere between $30 and $60 an hour in a nightclub by yourself. If you're paying for a second person, you're paying double. So you're looking at about $120 for you and a date in a nightclub for an hour of drinking, unless you're going to be conservative about your drinking habits. Plus the $60 to get in there, that's $220, plus the parking fee to get out the parking lot, $240. You could have saved that money easy. Exactly. $300 easy. And that's the kind of thing that if you're doing that every weekend, that you could have, just like I told you, legitimately, I've crunched the numbers. It is a tax law that banks are required to report if you've made more than $10 of interest at a bank. But if you don't make more than $10 of interest at a bank, they're not typically compelled to report it. So if you open one bank account with 5% interest, and the average bank is getting 5% interest as an incentive for people to open up a bank account. And you want to go grab you a bank account that has no performance criteria. And you get that particular bank account and you put that money in there. And I want to say I crunched the numbers and I believe that it's right around $175 that you put into that 5% interest account. And it might be a little bit more. It might be like 195 because I was also looking at the 7% because there's two credit unions that have 7%. One has 7.50% or 7.15%, and the other one is right at 7%. And if you're putting this money into the bank account, your goal is to get $9.75 of interest off of each account that you open. And it's pennies that you're thinking about when I'm talking to you about this, but it's pennies that the IRS doesn't know about, because you have to understand that up until Project 2025 goes into effect, you're going to be paying like 28% interest on interest. So if you make $200 and you've got to give back 40, you actually made 180. So regardless of what your interest rates are, and then it depends on where your money is, because if your money is on an app gaining interest, when you go to cash out, you're going to have to pay 3% or 15% or whatever interest to get your money off of that app. And if the app is only going to send the money to PayPal, it's going to charge you even more to put the money into your bank account. So by the time you actually get to spend it, you might have lost half of the money that you earned, but the IRS is going to tax you on the 100% of the money that you made on the app, not the amount of money you were capable of spending after the fact. So how much money did you really make? If you made 15%, but you had to pay out 3%, you're going to get taxed 20% of what you made, which is typically going to take about 4% of what you earn. You just lost 7% already. You're now at 8%. And if you've got to pay another 2 to 3% to deposit it into your bank account, by the time you get it, you're at 5%. So you're the difference between that and doing low risk investments by putting it into a 5% interest bank account, and those 5% interest checking accounts, not savings accounts. The checking account is going to require you to have up to, so it's a cap, up to $500 into that account. And they're going to have a minimum balance. Sometimes some of them don't. Some of them have a $0 balance. Those are the best ones to have. But the ones that have a minimum balance are like $30 to $50 or whatever. But you can have up to $500. You just put that couple $100. So you said $300 a night easy. 2 weekends, you can open 3 bank accounts, 10% interest, where you're getting about $28 a year of interest off of that 2 weekends of going out to the club. Start stacking that up on a regular basis. In 5 to 10 years, you're going to be getting $20,000 of interest that nobody knows about, because nobody's saying anything, because it's less than $10. They're not going to waste the paper that it costs to print a 1099 and send it to the IRS and tell them, hey, he made $9.75 this year. And the reason why it's one bank account per bank is because if you have multiple bank accounts, you think, oh, well, I can just open 12 different bank accounts. No, the bank that you bank with will take all of the accounts under your name, put them together, and determine that you made more than $10 of interest with them. And then they're going to report that to the IRS. So you get one bank account with each bank. And the reason why I did this math, and I was like, this is an untapped idea. It's tedious because you have to keep track of all of these bank accounts. If you have a Clio account, it's easier to keep track of all of these bank accounts because all of your bank accounts are linked to one account. And then you could just transfer a couple dollars here and there every other month into this one account where you can just spend it all, or you can invest it somewhere else. But there are over 8,000 financial institutions in the United States. So if you had 8,000 financial institutions with a little under $200 in them, you would have what? $1.6 million roughly. Give or take, crunching the numbers. There's a lot of zeros involved in that. And 5% interest of that. And the funny thing about that 5% interest is that it's not going to be negatively impacted by inflation. And it's not taxed because nobody said anything. So if you're getting $50,000 and nobody knows what you're getting, guess what you can do with that money? Remember that you're not supposed to be moving money Typically $10,000, they start reporting it to the IRS. But if you are moving money less than $9,000, they're not reporting it to the IRS. So $8,500 of money. If you're wiring it overseas, $8,700. If you include the wire transfer fees, you're wiring it overseas to offshore bank accounts. Now you are making money that nobody knew that you made, and you're sending that money somewhere else every month. Then when you travel, you're not taking any luggage. You're just buying a plane ticket, clothes on your back, hop on a plane, go to where your money is. Invest it over there. Live like a king over there. We've done like 8 shows on this podcast in the last 3 months where we talked about how the Philippines is $1,000 a month for middle-class standard of living. China, Vietnam, South Korea, because we can't go to North Korea, Switzerland, Romania. We have one of our fans, Red Void, who was telling us how the standard of living in Romania was $800 a year. I mean, $800 a month. So if you're spending $1,000 a month for a middle-class lifestyle, whereas you're spending $3,000 a month for rent, the lifestyle is $1,000 a month. We're talking about rent, light, gas, utilities, transportation, phone bills, clothes, food, entertainment, everything is inside of that $1,000 a month. Then you think about in the United States that your rent is $3,000 a month, plus the utilities that you have to pay. You're looking at about a $5,500 a month lifestyle. And that's not even guaranteeing that you're comfortable. That just means that you're not hurting. See what I'm saying? So 25% of the cost of living to live a lower middle class lifestyle in the United States, 25% of that cost of living, you would be living a middle class to upper middle class lifestyle in a third world country. So if you're sending $8,500 a month to a different country, for example, Nagano, Japan, $793. So $8,500 is 1 year's worth of living. So you do that 10 times, you can literally move to Nagano and live for free for the rest of your life because your money's already over there. You just put it over there into a bank account, set it up some kind. And here's another thing while we're talking, because I know we were talking about relationships, but I'm just going to talk to you about money real quick because we're wasting all this money on relationships. And I know y'all are on TikTok, so you guys see Franklin telling you about get your money up. Think about this. Nagano will pay you $23,000 to start up a business out there. $23,000 US to start up a business out there. So you go over there with $8,500 that you made off of all these high interest bank accounts that you're getting interest on by not wasting that $300 per engagement at the club. And then you take that money, you put that money into your standard living over there. The government will give you money. They're dealing with a population shortage over there in Japan. So you can smash bitches, but get them all pregnant and have them drop babies that the government will voluntarily pay for. You're not going to get thrown on child support. The government's going to voluntarily pay for those kids because they're trying to increase the population over there. They're going to be paying for the hospital bills and everything for the kids until they're 18 years of age. And it's not restrictive to the financial income. Like in the United States, you got to be under the poverty line to receive government assistance. In Japan, you just got to meet the population criteria and they'll start paying for your kid. You don't have to try it no more. You can have a family of 5 and all 3 of the kids are paid by the Japanese government because they want more kids in their population. So when you go over there and you think $1,000 a month, $975 a month for the standard of living in Nagano, Japan, and you and one other person is going to be $1,500 a month, plus the 3 kids is going to be $1,500 a month. Notice how that value didn't go up. You have 5 kids, you're still paying $1,500 a month because the country's paying for the kids. And you started up a business that gave you $23,000 and $8,500 covers a whole year's worth of living. You could go over there. You could hire 2 employees to run the business for you. You don't have to go to work. You're still getting money from the U.S. government, but you got kids over here in Japan and you're living in Japan off of that $8,500 a year plus the $23,000 that Japan gave you to say thank you for helping us build jobs for our Japanese culture, and thank you for repopulating our population. And even as an American citizen, you still have the golden plus that a foreign domestic company that you set up in Japan, you as an American citizen don't have to pay taxes on the money that you get if you even report it to the U.S. government up to $120,000. So you could be making another $120,000 from Japan while you're making 5% interest on $100,000 in the United States that you're sending to Japan. And you can start up businesses in Japan and you can get $23,000 for every business that you start up in Japan, and you can live in Japan. So we find ways to make money for us. And all of that puts you in a culture that is still traditionally based, where women are taught from childhood to respect and honor and obey their men, and be partners to their men, not dominate their men and control their men and manipulate their men into doing the things that they want to do. So you're going to actually get a completely different experience out there than what you would get here in the United States. So all of that leading back to, you might want to sample some different cultures, because if you sample a different culture, you're going to get out there and experience something out there that you're not experiencing out here in the United States. And then you're going to come to find that you're going to get better success. And when you start thinking about your retirement, because the big business is not setting us up for retirement. Back in the 30s and 40s and 20s, when lifespan was 55, they're like, oh yeah, you work for us for 20 years. That is 3/4 of your life. You're not going to have much life left. We'll pay for the rest of your life after you quit. So you give us 20 years of labor. You start at 15. You work 20 years. You're 35 years old. You're going to live to 25. We're going to pay you for the remainder. Not a problem. Now you work for us for 20 years. You start at 16. You're 36. You're going to live to be 100. No company's going to pay you for 70 years of your life. They're going to make you work for 3/4 of your life, if not 7/8 of your life, unless you get injured and are deemed disabled. They're going to pay for the last percentage. So Social Security disability is like 68, almost 72 years old right now. Hard to get on that. Then they're giving you $800 a month. You're making more than that on one paycheck on your job. So can you imagine working for a company for 20 years and then retiring off of your $1,500 to $2,000 a month that you're making, and then segueing that back to trying to get $800 a month to live off of? You're going to still need a second job. You're not going to be able to live off of that. So we have to start trying to build up our retirement. We have to start trying to build up our nest egg. And we don't learn this until somebody tells us about it. We don't know this until we start getting into our middle ages and realize that I'm still struggling. Body's not into it no more. We have a lot of built up injuries from living our life at both ends, burning a candle at both ends. And now we're realizing, shit, I need to get my shit together. I need to start trying to find ways to not have to keep doing this. You know, I'm tired of working for somebody that don't have no respect for me. You know, I'm tired of having young bucks half my age getting hired with more pay than what I'm getting. And I've been doing this way longer than they knew that this job existed. You know, all of these experiences that we have, that's when we start saying, man, I need to start doing something different. But you're halfway through before you realize that. So you start making changes. And as you're making changes, you got to start it up from the ground up. And that's when you start experiencing the stuff that I talk about on this podcast. So once we get to this point, this is when we start saying, well, if you're going to be looking for somebody, these females is looking for ambitious men. Some of them that are outside of the minority groups are looking for ambitious men. And since they're looking for the ambitious men, not just the wealthy men, if you've got that drive and that ambition and you're chasing that and you're trying to build that wealth, you will find women in different social groups and different cultures that will support that. You have some women that will get a job just so that they can help pay for your job. They have some women that will go to work and bring the money back and give it to you because that's how they were raised in their culture. But here in the Western country, that doesn't apply. You're not going to get too many women that will allow you to tell them what to do, much less tell them what to do with the money that they work for. They're going to tell you what to do with the money that you work for. They're going to tell you what you better do. And then if you don't do what they tell you to do, they're going to deprive you of emotional and sexual attention. So now you're cut off. Y'all still existing in the same house, but she's ignoring you. She won't let you touch her. She's always got a headache, her stomach hurts, or tired, until you start paying out the way she wants you to pay out. And now all of a sudden she loves you again. And you tolerate that until you leave her and go get a woman that's willing to be on her knees waiting on you to walk through the front door. So culture differences. This is what I tell you guys about on a regular basis. And it is what it is. I just recommend it. It's not just it is what it is. I try to make it sense on a regular basis. And I also tell you guys that it is what you make it. So when I'm telling you that it is what you make it, I try to encourage you guys to go make it better for yourselves. So this podcast is actually tuned on, let's see where we at right now, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and TikTok. So you'll see us in a lot of different places, but you should hit that subscription button for YouTube because it gives you a 30-minute notification we're about to go live. And then it also tells you after we've gone live, because sometimes we start a few minutes late because I got to stream off of 2 different platforms because I don't have my stream key yet. So if you haven't hit that follow me button on TikTok, please hit that follow me button on TikTok, because the quicker we can get to about 10,000, the quicker we can get that stream key where everybody's talking to everybody at the same time. Because I got at least 4 different channels that are intermingled, and half of y'all can't see the other half of y'all talking. So try to pull all y'all together, and then y'all can start seeing everybody's comments going through the screen and everything like that, so that you guys can interact with one another. But live interactive podcast, I like insightful people. You guys come in and you guys don't have to just watch and listen. You actually can click the link and jump into the podcast and put your 2 cents in if you have any. Whether you're with my opinion or against it, this is the podcast to be able to jump in. I know that TikTok has this opportunity for you to do a multi-guest feature where you guys can actually just segue in from the multi-guest thing. But that just, oh, I didn't turn it on. That's why. Yeah, that should have been turned on when the show first started. That's my bad, guys. Sometimes it's already activated, sometimes it's not. I'm still working on this with the TikTok platform, because over with everybody else is coming to me through StreamYard, and we're able to just click the link from the comment section and it just throws you up there on the screen, and then you'll be able to put your 2 cents in there. But I know that I come from a more innovative perspective, and these platforms are typically, watch, listen, and comment. And I'm more of a, hey, say what you have to say kind of guy. So I'm a very unique podcast. So the more we interact with one another on a daily basis, the more you guys are going to start jumping in and jumping onto the podcast and throwing your shout outs and putting your 2 cents in. We're going to try to keep it a little bit professional, but because, community guidelines, but it is an adult platform. So we will have a little bit of profanity, a little bit of adult language, which is why the kids can't come onto the podcast. But I'm all about sharing knowledge and sharing concepts and sharing ideas and giving us the insight that we need, and talk about the topics that we don't have the time or the courage to talk about, typically because we're working a lot, or we're in the type of social groups where we're being man-shamed for having an opinion. And, this is one of those podcasts where we can really start talking about the shit that doesn't make sense, because it doesn't make sense to me if we're spending $3 per night or $300 on a weekend to go out. If it's $300 a night, that's even worse, because that's $900 on a weekend. You could have dropped that into at least 4 bank accounts, and you would have been making 5% interest on that. And that's a lot of money that you're throwing away plus interest to go and have a good time. But we're not going to realize that if we as men invest in ourselves instead of wasting time entertaining ourselves, then we as men will be more successful. And then we as men being more successful would be more appealing to women that are looking for already established men, because in the Western culture, the women are not interested in the men that haven't made it yet. They're only interested in the men that are already fully established. So outside of the women that are playing the field and sampling all the rides, I mean, yeah, you have no problem with using a rental, but you're not going to buy a rental. So think about that. You have no time with sleeping with a girl that's sleeping around. She's easy. You get yours. Like Lil Wayne, I just want to try it once and I'm good. That's the mentality that we can have. But you're not going to take that girl that's got a body count of 100 and turn that into a wife. You're not going to take the local stripper and turn that into a wife. You're not going to take the girl that's standing on the corner and selling herself for a little or nothing and turn that into a wife. So in order for us to be more worthy of that conservative wife, we're going to have to be more financially stable, and we're going to have to be more financially challenged. So we have here with Wing Speed, I'm black male boomer. Exactly. As a kid in the 60s, dad said, much what you've said, preach. Hey, I got to tell you, my dad's talking to me all the times. I've always listened to my elders. I am a millennial, so I'm an 80s baby, and I can tell you that I learned this from firsthand experience, but I also learned a lot of this from research, and I learned a lot of this from going to college and doing research, because I didn't really get my degree for what I'm doing now. I actually got a degree in microbiology and communication health and computer technology, trying to be a pediatric surgeon. And then fibromyalgia interfered with my ability to have stable hands. So I didn't go into the med school and become a surgeon. But all these degrees, and now I'm starting up all my own businesses, creating podcasts, teaching online, doing everything but being a doctor, which is what I went to college for. So now I've got like $70,000 worth of student loans that I deferred for eternity. Yeah, you can do that. $0 payments for the rest of my life, baby. So I got my education, and now I got to utilize it. So Winkspeed says, I was only a kid in high school with a checking account. Right. Now, here in the United States in 2024, if you have reasonable parents that show you about banking, help you get your checking account, and show you how to spend and save. And there's a thing called it's off the top of my head. It's a term that is used where you add somebody to your credit line, and they benefit from your credit limit, but they don't actually have access to utilizing your credit limit. Once I remember it, I'll do a show about it. But what happens is that you can help your next generation build their credit by just adding them. Is it an affiliate user? I think that's the term. I could be wrong. I've got to go back because it's off the top of my head. I haven't used that term in a few months, but I've been talking about it on the show because it's the quickest way to establish credit for somebody who doesn't have credit. If you have high levels of credit cards that you don't use, this is the best way to do it to establish credit for your kids, is to add them on as I think it's an affiliate user. It starts with an A. I can't think of the term right now, but you add them onto the account. You don't issue them a card. They're just on the account. And when the account reports to the three major credit bureaus, it reports to their credit as well. Now, if you have a $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 credit card, and you put your 16-year-old on that credit card, you're not using that credit card, and that credit card is always in good standings with zero utilization, then your kids now have an 800 credit score. So you're starting them off at the top instead of starting them off in the middle with no credit, no utilization, or a bunch of debt. Another thing, like you said, that you started high school with just a checking account. Think about the fact that when you came out of high school and went to college, nobody told you that career students actually borrow against a stone on purpose, because you don't just take what you need for your education. You can also take what you need for your standard of living. So you can do one of two things. If you are working a full-time job and trying to go to school, you can work less and borrow money from the college to pay for your standard of living so that you can focus on your college education. Or if your bills are being paid for, this is where I say, hey, college will benefit you, because you don't necessarily need that piece of paper. You just need the money from the student loans that you're accessing. So first step is you can get subsidized loans from the school that are deferred loans until you graduate school. And those deferred loans are continued to be deferred for the remainder of your life as long as you are a part-time college student. So even after you get your bachelor's degree, you can keep going back to college and continue to defer your loans. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to have good credit, but it does mean that you will have more access to money. Now, you can borrow this money, you can utilize this money and invest it into high interest yield accounts that will mature after a certain period of time and give you back a large quantity of profits that you could then take the principal, give it back to the loan, and use the interest to reinvest. And that's where your credit score goes up, because you pay back this massive loan. You borrow $60,000 from your colleges, and you don't need it for your standard of living, and you didn't spend it towards your education, and you invested that 60 grand somewhere for the 4 to 6 years that you're in college, and then you're building that interest for 4 to 6 years that you're in college. Then you take that 70 grand and give it back to them, and the 100, 200, $300,000 worth of interest that you made off of that money over the 4 years or more, you're now using the principal to invest because you already took you're using the interest to invest because you took the principal and gave it back and you paid off the loans, and now your credit score's through the roof. That's something that they don't teach you in high school. Another thing they don't tell you, now they have student credit card limits. So you can get with no credit. You don't need a personal guarantor or anything. All you have to do is be enrolled as a college student. You can get credit cards. You can establish a line of credit. So if you don't have somebody who's able to sign it and add you on to their credit limit to give you a credit boost, you can just show up with your student ID and they'll give you a checking account, a credit card, and a savings account. And you go to like 12 different banks and do that. And you can get 12 different $250 credit lines with a checking account and a savings account. And between the two accounts, you would put $200 in the checking account, $300 in the savings account. And that's all you really got to do. And now you got all these lines of credit. You do that 12 times, and now you've got, almost $3,000 worth of credit. And then just don't use it. Don't use it. People get credit cards and then they use the credit cards and then they can't afford to pay back the balance. You get those lines of credit and you hold them and you don't use them. And then you use that increased line of credit that's untapped to give you a higher credit score that you can utilize to get larger credit limits. You don't want to spend on a low credit limit. You want to spend on the high credit limits. You want to keep 12 or 15 different $250 credit cards that you don't mess with and get one $15,000 credit card that you use 10% of. And that keeps your credit score high. And then what the smartest thing to do is that when you establish all of these lines of credit for your personal self, instead of charging stuff to your personal credit, you use this. And then you follow me on the show when I tell you about starting up your C corporations. You start up a business and you use your personal credit as the 750 or the 800 or whatever as a personal guarantor to get you business credit. And then when you use your business credit, you're going to get a personal guarantor line of credit. You're not going to use that one neither. But that business credit will give you a $50,000 or $150,000 line of credit for your business that shows up on your personal credit score, which is why I'm telling you not to use it. But because that business got a $50,000 or $100,000 line of credit, guess what that business can do now? Go and establish unsecured business credit that is exclusive to the business. This is when you start balling, because if you've already got $2,000 or $8,000 under your name personally as a student, you started up a business with $500 and established your tax ID number and got your business all set up, then you established the business credit, you got you another 50 grand of credit. So that's also usable. And now you're going to use this a better credit line for your business to go and get yourself unsecured debt from the business, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 of credit. And those unsecured credit cards for the business, charge all your personal debt to. You're golden now. Now, if you had any debt, it's all cleared up. So your credit score now is an 850. If you got no debt, you got income. Your debt to credit ratio is 0. You have 0 debt to credit, to 100% credit. You'll be able to get better housing. You're going to be able to get better jobs, because any jobs that revolve around money requires you to have good credit, good spending habits. Housing industries want you to have good credit, good spending habits, because if you have poor spending habits, they're going to assume that you can't afford to pay your rent, which means that they're not going to lease to you because your credit's bad. You can be a good person and they won't lease you. So now you're living in a bad neighborhood because your credit's bad. That you don't deserve that. You're a good person, but you just don't have the right credit. You wasn't taught these things. So this is the stuff that I show people. So all of these things coming together could lead you to have a better opportunity in your personal life. However, because you got this business, if everything is tied into the business, and you would have to have multiple businesses, and I'm going to be going into this down the line on the podcast. You have to have multiple businesses set up, because you have one business that revolving money is going to go through, another business that's going to hold ownership of your assets, and then you may even have another business that you're going to redirect money to as a tax write-off. And we're going to be talking about all of those complexities down the line. But your personal self owns nothing. and your personal self doesn't have to pay for nothing. So your personal self doesn't have to pay for taxes. That's where Donald Trump said on the podium that one day, I don't pay taxes. That's because he personally doesn't make money. All of his businesses make money for him. All of his businesses pay taxes for him. And doesn't necessarily pay taxes because everything he does is a tax write-off. Every time he gets on a plane, it's a tax write-off because it's just business. If your lifestyle is just business, even when you travel to Japan on vacation, it's a business trip. You go to visit family, you're going to go to visit family and do business. It's a business trip. If you're not going to DC just to go see the Lincoln Memorial, you're going to DC so that you can go invest in some stocks or look into a business venture. It's a business trip. While you're out there, you're going to go to the Lincoln Memorial. You know, everything that you do right now, the company business should be paying for the phone bill. The company these days work from home, so at least half of the cost of the house can be written off as a business expense, as long as the business is stationed out of the house. And you don't even need to have a physical address for the business, a post office box. So you don't actually have to have them mailing everything directly to the actual business that you're tied to. You could actually have the business that you're tied to a local post office box. And I'm not sure if the post office box is the same across the country, but from what I understand, that the U.S. Postal Service is charging you $200 a year for a post office box. So you could establish a business and redirect all of your mail to that individual post office box. You could just pass by that post office box once a week and go collect all of the mail from all the businesses that are collecting mail at that box. And yeah, you would be doing yourself a justice because you would be able to run all of your business. I got 11 phone numbers because I'm setting up a lot of businesses, and they're tied to 3 different phones and a computer. Something's going to ring, and it's going to be a business call, and then I have to take that call and then and knock it out. I block out a certain time slot for the podcast, but for the rest of the time, I got 2 different phones ringing off the hook, at least, if not 3 different phones and a computer ringing off the hook. I'm texting people from my desktop, trying to do business, because turn the entire life into a business. Fact of the matter is that if we knew this in high school, if this is what we were taught in math class, instead of how to add 3 K's together and get K cubed, then we would be better at making money as men. We would be better at establishing finances as men. We would be more suited and being considered financially stable by the women that we're attempting to court, which would make it less difficult for men to be financially stable and make it less difficult for them to find a partner, because instead of us being broke as fuck until we're almost 45, we would be moderately stable unless we're the kind of person that deliberately makes bad choices on a regular basis. So if we were in this position where we were taught better by our elders, if we were taught better by the last generation what to do and how to do it, we would not have made as many mistakes. And then we would have been better off, and we would have been teaching somebody else not to make the mistakes that we heard about. And they would be telling somebody else not to make mistakes. These mistakes would become rumor because nobody would be making these mistakes, because we're warning one another, hey, there's a better way. And if more of us are taking that better way, we wouldn't have 99% of the population being on the poor side. The only reason why 99% of the population is on the poor side is because only 1% of the population is talking about how to do it right. The rest of us don't know, don't care, and will prefer to put 32-inch rims on our SUV and pay, $80 a gallon than to go and get an electric car and charge it at the house. Then the funny thing about those electric cars is that the electric cars the electric cars are a status symbol, and it doesn't benefit the ecosystem, because it takes about 20 years of pollution to make the battery that will last you 10 to 20 years. So if you own the vehicle for 20 years, it is better for the environment overall on the back end, but it's not better for the environment on its creation. So you're just making up for lost time. And then on top of that, when you know that typically your car either breaks down or gets into a crash within the first 3 to 5 years, so the cars don't typically last 20 years. And if you're financing the car, you're not going to turn a profit on a vehicle until 10 years of ownership. So, but if you buy cash up front, it might be like 5 to 8 years before you break even on buying an electric car, because they're only going to give you $7,500 tax credit on it, which is going to reduce the price of the car, because you're going to use that tax credit as the reduced the down part of the down payment on the car, because their dealerships are doing that now. They are collecting that tax credit for you and just putting it on the price of the car when you first get it. So you're not going to see something from Uncle Sam on tax day because you bought a Tesla that, oh, they're going to give you an extra $7,500 during tax season. That's not going to happen. Is it? Many wouldn't listen or take action anyway, thanks to our lousy education. Well, our lousy education is our lousy education because education was supposed to start at home. And then you were supposed to go to school and ask questions. You're supposed to be self-learning and self-taught. And people typically send their kids to school to get them out of the house. So the school is the babysitter. And you just learn stuff with the babysitter. And that's the reason why you have unruly children in the schools, because they're not taught at home. And then they're not taught how to behave. And then they have to learn how to behave at school. And then you have some parents, and especially in lower class environments, that don't know how to behave and will dare you to challenge their children. And now you have to be afraid to discipline the children in public schools, even though there are 19 states in the United States that still does corporal punishment in the schools. Then kids don't get their ass whooped, but they need their ass whooped. So if they caught a couple extra whoopings, they wouldn't be misbehaving in school. You got corporal punishment in Japan. How many kids do you hear about in Japan that's doing mass shootings? You know, they had 10 shootings last year, countrywide. We had 10 shootings in the last 30 minutes. we have 10 deaths every 3 seconds. So we're not, the unruly behavior is coming from the lack of discipline and lack of self-control and lack of taught self-control in our country and in our heritage and in our family traditions. So, you know, they're not telling us this. But real quick, before we get on that topic, I just want you to think about this here, is that with all of that stuff that you're doing with your business, you could actually get a cash loan from your business and buy your electric vehicle cash up front. Now you got the title to the business, to the vehicle. And that's probably the only thing that you're going to put into your personal name is probably the vehicles, because if you put the vehicle into a trust and you get into a crash, then they can sue the trust. So unless that vehicle is the only thing in the trust, then everything in that trust will be up for grabs if that vehicle is involved into a car crash. But if you put the vehicle in a trust and you don't own anything, then still you're in a position where you have no assets, and then you have a holding company that's responsible for all of the stuff that is in holding, right? Which is another C corporation. So that means that you have debt by the business and assets separate from the debt. And in those situations, if the business is holding the debt, not you're holding the debt, it's not on your credit report, it's on the business's side. And if the business tanks, you can liquidate the business, file Chapter 11 or Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and then liquidate the business, and all of the cash debt, because there's no assets of that business, is liquidated with the business. The holding company over here is separate from the business that has the cash debt, and the cash debt is separate from you. So now you personally can start up another business because you still have a perfect credit. You have a perfect credit score. You have an 800 or an 850 or 810, and you can use that to start you up another business with personal guarantor lines of credit. And funny, when you liquidate the business, the personal guarantor lines of credit are not liquidated with that business. So you still have those $50,000 to $100,000 credit cards when you say, well, that business isn't doing anything else. But that's just going to keep your personal credit score high. So you'll end up with $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 worth of credit cards that you don't use, plus the unsecured credit cards from the business that you will use, and then you will utilize those lines of credit borrowed against whatever income that's coming in from those businesses that you're going to try to establish, and then utilize that to bring in all of your wealth and charge everything to the game. So with all of this knowledge that I've talked to you guys in the second half of the show, and these are the things that we talk about on the podcast throughout the year, in addition to social interactions and social inequality and gender inequality, where men are not being treated the way they should be getting treated. And we don't realize this until we're middle-aged. We just get used to it and get over it and get gone. And then when we realize halfway through that we had no value until we were almost 40. And now that we're in our 40s, now that we start getting that value, now people are looking at us different. But we got to be financially stable in order to get out there and go hunt. But nobody wants to die alone, so everybody's trying to find companionship, and we're wondering, why is it so hard for us to find a good relationship? So I decided to start up this podcast and show everybody, hey, there's a better way. We can find better people. We can stand on our non-negotiable expectations for behavior. We can interact with more valuable people, increase your network, find more people that are going to be more successful than you, so that you can find out from them how they became successful, so that you can do that too. Then you can also observe the people that you're engaging with and interacting with. And so instead of throwing your money at this girl to convince her to give you her time, because you are what is valuable as a man, because she wants your resources, you're interviewing her. So that outside of a cup of coffee and a bottle of water, you're not really buying nothing until you determine that she has value. And her value to you is not the sex that she's putting out. The value to you is what she will do that benefits you in this relationship if you start paying for her. And you shouldn't pay for her until you can actually see what she is willing to contribute. So like those women that say that I'm not making you a sandwich until you put a ring on this finger. Well, ma'am, I'm not paying for any of our dates until you show me that you're worthy. So you're going to have to do more than spread your legs in order to get $1 out of this pocket. Otherwise, I'm going to take this money and go and invest it. Because if you're getting 5% interest on every date that you would have gone on, every date that I'm going on is 5% interest that I'm not getting. So you're not just losing $300 on a date. You're losing $315 on the date. And that's going to be compounded over the number of years that money would have been sitting somewhere until you decided to go and tap into that money. And because that money was in checking accounts, that's the most accessible emergency funds that you could actually have. So if we have another COVID experience, you need $21,000 or $22,000 a year to be able to pay 6 months worth of living. You need approximately, and that's a middle class lifestyle, of about $3,500 a month worth of bills. About $21,000, $22,000 for 6 months. Probably you would need more than $44,000 roughly to cover a full year's worth of bills. So if the country shut down for 12 months, you would need to have $44,000 sitting aside. And if you don't have that, instead of spending $300 at a time going out having a good time with these females to entertain them and to wow them and to woo them, they need to be after you for how you treat them, not how much money you spend on them. Because if you're like Chris Brown and you're spending $100,000 a night and they're getting black eyes and broken jaws and dislocated rotator cuffs to get that $100,000 a night, is it really worth it, man? Because you're not getting plastic surgery because you want it. You're getting reconstructive surgery because he threw you down a flight of stairs for the 5th time this week. But that's the kind of man that they want to marry. He's rich. You know, who cares if I have a broken pelvis in 4 places? You know, but the guy who's just barely making it, he might be able to buy you a $3 plastic rose from a gas station while he's putting gas in a car on his way to his 2nd job and bring it back to you before he goes to his 3rd job. You don't want that guy. You know, you want the guy that's going to put you on a private jet and fly you across the world and leave you there because you didn't listen after he broke your jaw. So as men, instead of us competing with the abnormalities of higher class living, you know, it makes more sense to, you know, hold ourselves to a higher level of regard and set non-negotiable expectations for behavior and treat this like a job interview, because marriage is a financial institution. It's not just under the eyes of God. Marriage is a financial institution. And since it is a financial institution, you're in a position of saying, hey, we need to be starting to do this girlfriend contract. And even in civil court, they say that they can't dispute sexual behavior, but all of the assets that are involved in a contract can be exchangeable. Those tangible assets can be transferable in a contract. So her accessibility to your car, your house, your bank account, the amount of money that you're planning on giving her in a relationship, what she's entitled to walking away from if this relationship was to fold, it's a prenuptial agreement before the prenuptial agreement. And for the modern generation where we don't really want to get married, because a wedding is a waste of money. $35,000 for a ring and $100,000 for a wedding. You just spent $135,000 that you could have put somewhere and made a shit ton. I could tell you right now about a trading app called Pionex that you could have took that $135,000 and put it into Bitcoin and turned it into $300,000 inside of 60 days. And you took that and spent it on a wedding when you could have went to the Justice of the Peace for $50. And you might could have went to the Justice of the Peace with an indigent form if you're in the state of Florida and had them waive that cost of court, and you could have got married for free. and you're telling me that you're going to spend $135,000 to do it so that you could put a ring on somebody's finger and say that that's my property? Nah, I'm straight. I ain't wasting that kind of money. But just for the sake of discussion, though, you know, marriage is a financial institution. If you have contracts starting out in the dating phase, once you realize that you guys are going to be long-term, get them to sign some yes and no's as to their financial expectations, their accessibility to things. That contract helps you with eviction. So when the relationship is over, once you fully establish that the relationship is over, that one of you was going to give somebody a 2-week notice to vacate based on the contract that says that, hey, at the understanding that we are no longer in this relationship, one person gives the other person written notice, and the person who is primarily the owner of the house has to give them the requirement to remove their stuff from the house within a certain period of time. After that certain period of time, it's easy for you to now go to the court and say, hey, they forfeited their right to stay here according to this contract. We're no longer involved with one another. And according to this contract, when we're no longer involved with one another, they must relinquish their possession of premises to everything that is in this contract. So give me back my authority over my stuff. Because actually in places like Florida, Commonwealth laws prevent you from putting your spouse out. You can't just change the locks on them. They can put you in jail for that. And she can get a bunch of money for that. You can't just call the police and report your car stolen because your girlfriend took your car. You gave her the keys. It's her car now, unless you settle in civil court. So you have to have everything in writing right now. You can't date somebody and just lend them your car. You have to have a written document that says that at any point in time, I reserve the right to withdraw your authorization of utilization of this particular property and this particular asset. And you must relinquish that property within 48 hours of written notice. And that written notice can come in the form of an email or a text message. And whether or not you respond to that email or text message does not negate the fact that you have been notified. And then you send them the text message. You are no longer authorized to utilize my property. Return it at once. And then print that, put it into a legal action and say, hey, I gave him written notice. They did not respond. They still have the property. Now I want them to return the property with the damages included, punitive damages, including cost of court. So now you got to return my property, and you're going to be responsible for any damages done to my property when you return my property. And you're going to pay for the cost of court and any inconveniences that I had to go through with taking you to court to get my property back. This is a business now. So if it is going to be a business, you're going to treat it as such. You got to interview these girls. You're not trying to wow them and impress them. They're trying to wow you and impress you. You're spending all the money. Let me ask you a question. When has a business ever spent a bunch of money trying to impress the employees to come work for them? Not a now, another. They spend money on advertisement to let you know that there's a job opening, but do they bribe you in the interview? Are they taking you on a $300 lunch to get you to come work for them at McDonald's? No. They'll tell you come back after 2:00 so that they can talk to you after the rush. They're gonna make you wait because they got shit to do, right? And as most businesses are gonna do that. in a relationship, and relationships are financial business these days, and most engagements with women these days are transactional. So since most of the relationships these days are transactional, we understand that transactionally, she's going to expect you to spend a certain quantity of money, and transactionally, you're going to expect her to put out a certain quantity. It is what it is. And since it is transactional, we need to be recognizing that if I'm going to be getting into a relationship where I'm renting the girl until you find that higher value woman that's actually going to love and respect you and appreciate you, if we're going to be getting into a relationship where we're renting the girl and calling it a relationship, we need to understand that we have to first guarantee that we're going to get what we're paying for. So you have to set your standards. She has to be able to meet those standards, and she has to be well aware that just like if you didn't have enough money that she would leave your ass, if you're not doing what I want you to do that are non-monetary requirements, that you're not getting any money out of me, and I might leave your ass. That if we make that establishment up front, and since this is not just whether or not you put out, this is going to be your overall behavior. When I tell you don't do something and you're going to do it, and I'm trying to tell you something that's in your best interest, like, don't get into that fight at Waffle House or whatever. If you're going to be that kind of person to ignore me and go over there and get into some, bro, that's it. It's dead. Because if I can't protect you because you don't follow instructions, and I don't want to have you around me because you are going to be a danger to my safety, because I have to get involved in even more dangerous situations because of your volatile behavior. If the president has to answer to 10 or 20 grown men so that the president can go from one place to another, then you, ma'am, should be able to report in to your boyfriend if he matters to you, so that he knows where you are, so that he knows that you're safe, and so that he can analyze the situation that you're in and come to your aid, because the response time of a loved one is faster than the response time of law enforcement. And then you also have to think about the fact that if your girlfriend doesn't have enough respect for you to tell you where she's going, who she's going to be in, what kind of car she's going in, how long she's going to be there, and when she plans on coming back, so that if she doesn't come back, the problem that you're going to have is that it takes 72 hours to tell Johnny Law that something happened to your girlfriend. But it is not going to take 72 hours for you to go look for your girlfriend. If she was supposed to be back at 11 o'clock, 11:10, you can go look for her. But if she was supposed to be back at 11 o'clock on the 1st, the police are not going to start looking for her until the 4th. It only takes 30 seconds to die. So if she's not willing to tell you where she's at and where she's going, if she needs help and she doesn't have a cell phone, she doesn't have reception, but you know where she's at, you can get there inside of 5 minutes. And the likelihood of her at least experiencing this negative experience for a shorter period of time is more probable. And the likelihood of survival is more increased than if she has to wait 3 days for somebody to even start looking for her from her last known whereabouts. And if she's not willing to tell you where the last known whereabouts are, where do you start looking? So all of these things play into account. And when you're finding a partner, when you're finding a spouse that's going to give you what you're looking for and be the kind of person that you need, while you're trying to be the kind of person that they need, you are able to formulate a stronger bond and a longer connection that's going to be more of a lifelong scenario. And that's one of the reasons why the older men are going after the younger women, because we are going to get more cooperation as financially stable older men dealing with non-emotionally, psychologically damaged younger women that have not been ran through like a cheerleader in a football team. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in today's show. I want you guys to make sure that you like and subscribe. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Twitch. Follow us on Twitter. Make sure that you subscribe to us on the YouTube channel if you ever have the opportunity. I know you guys seen it over there on the bottom right side of the screen. It takes you directly to the subscribe situation. You click the button and then you come back to TikTok. No worries. I'm very good with these cell phones. I know that if you click that, it'll take you away from this. You'll be on YouTube, but then you just hit the back button and you're back on TikTok. You're not even going to have to look for anything. So, but you'll be subscribed onto the YouTube channel. You'll be able to see all of the other shows and episodes that we put out. This was fun. Everything I do is informative, and I like to bring it to you in a very raw and unorthodox fashion, where you can kind of use critical thinking and piece these things together. And it also opens your mind to different perspectives, because just like I brought out the conspiracy of dark money and how it can negatively impact politics in our upcoming election, and the way I was talking about how AIs will be taking over the workforce back in March. The stuff that I was talking about in March happened when Amazon put Now they have 750,000 automated employees. So a lot of people are losing their jobs because robots are doing manual labor work. You have a lot of restaurants that are replacing employees. So now you might have one human in the kitchen and 5 or 10 machines that just replaced a 50-man work crew. So you're going to have a lot more unemployed people. If you don't have a tech degree, you don't have a job, unless you're in the medical field. I was telling people about how the dark money could pay off the electoral voters. Some people believe that, oh, that's not going to do anything. Yeah, it will, because 350,000 people can vote in one direction and 12 electoral voters can vote in another direction, and you have a different president than the popular vote. People say, Mr. Pibbs was telling me, oh, yeah, but they can get in trouble for that. Not necessarily, because it takes 90 days to open up an investigation, and they're not going to stop the inauguration ceremony. They're going to keep going with the inauguration ceremony until they have already taken legal action against those electoral voters. And since it takes 90 days to do an investigation, the president is selected in November, president-elect in December, elected as president in January. The conspiracy will come out after the votes have been tabulated, and the investigation is probably not going to be brought to a head till probably February, where a trial or a hearing will happen in March. President's going to be president in January. President can give them immunity in January, which means that everybody that participated in the scandal of electing a president would essentially have immunity from the current president to not be prosecuted. And if Project 2025 goes into effect, then Project 2025 is going to turn all of those civil servant jobs into government agent jobs, where they can fire all the Democrats, hire a bunch of Republicans, and you have a one-party government where everybody's on the same page, doing whatever everybody else agreed upon, following that book that was built in 2017 that is 950 pages long. I suggest that you go and watch it, or read it, not watch it, read it. And yeah, see how it's going to negatively impact you. Project 2025 is not going to benefit Social Security unless you're a veteran. It is going to take away from food stamps. It's going to take away from second-tier education. So after you get your bachelor's degree, master's degree loans are no longer accessible from the government. They're going to privatize Medicaid and Medicare, and they're going to make base level 15% taxes, where you think that's a good thing, but they're taking away all of the tax deductions on the local and state level. So you're not going to have a bunch of tax deductions that'll prevent you from having to pay as much taxes. And then they're going to 30% the rest of the people, which suck, because the big business C corporations can get tax breaks that allows them to pay zero in taxes, because they have enough tax breaks from corporate expenses. And then they're going to be doing 20% for business instead of 30%. It's 30% for individuals, but 20% for business. So you only need to have 20% of your overhead be written off as an expense. All of these things lead to the capabilities of then also using your investment capital. I was telling you all this before, that your investment capital will turn into another level of tax write-offs. That used to be 28%. Now it's 13.8%. All of these things are going to change with Project 2025. It's not going to benefit anybody, but and then they're going to go after the adult industry. So pornography is going to get impacted, and then the LGBTQ community is going to be at risk, and then they're going to go after immigration. All of these things are going to change. But what you have to understand is that the average everyday person is going to be impacted by this in a way where we're going to have to change and start becoming C corporations. And this is one of the reasons why I encourage you guys to follow the podcast and get in here and come and get all of this information. I try to share it in different ways, and you'll be able to learn a lot of stuff and then do your own research. You don't have to just do what I tell you to do. You can just listen to what I'm telling you and then go do your research and look into it, and then try to figure out what you want to do on the back end. Because once you understand what you've got to gain as well as what you've got to lose, you will be able to make better decisions in your future and not have to deal with so much of the chaos and catastrophic changes that's going to happen in our country. Social interaction will be easier. The dating game will be better. You'll be able to build your money up. You won't have to be dealing with financial constraints. It'll be better for you all the way around. And that's what I recommend. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm always going to say this after every show, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to ask y'all to make it make sense. So ladies, make it make sense. And while I'm signing out of TikTok, I want to let the rest of you know that I really appreciate you guys coming to the podcast. Thank you guys very much. You guys have shown us a lot of support. We actually had a lot of support from the fans today on TikTok. So you guys did a great job with coming in and giving us. We still have some signal issues, but you guys did a good job with coming in and participating and showing us some support, and we really appreciate that. It's always a pleasure. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to make it. So we really encourage you guys to make sure, if you haven't already joined the podcast, to like and subscribe to the podcast and try to follow us and get you some more insight and some more knowledge, because the things that we're going to try to do with you guys, for you guys, will help you guys become better in the upcoming future. So I'm your host, Xander, with this and that and everything in between, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night.